What's going on, everybody? It's EricRayweather back here, and in today's video we will be going over the brand new title update for Madden 19. It is finally out, and in my opinion this might be the biggest and most important update of the year so far. A lot of big changes to the game, both gameplay side and some other really interesting things that have been added to the game. A lot of stuff to honestly be excited about in this update. Hopefully it remains a good update and it doesn't further break anything in the game, but that remains to be seen. But let's get into it. Let's not waste too much time. So, some quick just key highlights, and then we're going to break down each section. I'm going to touch on the important stuff. I'm not going to touch on every little detail, but just mainly the important stuff. But some highlights. One of the biggest things for this update is it is the first ever post-launch update to Playbook. So basically now they have the ability to go in and update the playbooks mid-year, which this was not something that they could do in previous Madden. So they can add formations, they can change plays, change routes in plays. If there's a play that is just really overpowered and it's because of a certain glitchy route, they can actually go in and change the route of a play. So they can add formations, add plays. So plays that maybe you're seeing ran in the NFL, they can now add that into the game if they get it coded in and it's not game breaking or anything. They can add that to the game, so that's really good. They made a lot of improvements to the zone coverage, a lot of improvements to pass blocking. Franchise wise, mainly they made improvements to like time management, super sim, some draft logic stuff, and some menu improvements. And then Madden Ultimate Team got a really cool update that I'm going to touch on later in the video, but let's just start breaking it down by category. So the important tuning updates that happen, this is a big one. I know a lot of people have been complaining about, and they're going to be happy about this. It says that they tuned the camera flip after interceptions so that users are less likely to briefly run in the wrong direction as the camera flip completes. Seen a lot of complaints about that in my comments section. It's definitely something that has happened to me a few times as well on interceptions, so that is now fixed. No people will be happy about that. Another really big tuning update to kickoff accuracy. So if you have an inaccurate kick now, you will be penalized more with wildly inaccurate kicks going out of bounds. So those of you that play online, you know the term scum kick, or when people kick off the ball and they purposely, they kick it like right to the sideline to where your guy really can't recover it without diving on the ground and rolling backwards or going out of bounds. And basically they can, pin you inside the 15-yard line every single kickoff, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. The way that they place the kick, your guy gets an animation to where you cannot just catch the ball and run forward and try to return a kick. So that is something that is just very annoying and unrealistic, and they finally fixed that, and there's more on that later in this update as well. But now if you don't kick off the ball accurately, it's more than likely going to go really wildly out of bounds, and you're going to give your opponent the ball at the 40 every single time. So don't do that anymore. They also made a tuning update. Mainly this is kind of a something for real player motion. They improved the CPU control ball carrier logic. So if you played against the CPU, you would notice when they run the ball a lot that they would run it really kind of weird. And that was because when they would try to one-cut, the computer is not really able to one-cut accurately like a human could do. So they've kind of just limited how often they try to one-cut now, which means the CPU will run the ball better now. They will find the hole, find the open lanes and just run the ball smarter than they were previously. Now let's get into playbooks. So they have a note here. It says, "We are excited to announce that for the first time in Madden history, we can now support playbooks via title updates. This has been a long-time goal for the Madden team. These playbook changes are the first of many we hope to do as we move into the future." So the biggest change they made playbook-wise is they added the split backs formation to the West Coast and Balance playbooks. West Coast being one of the more popular playbooks in the game, so a lot of people will like to hear that. Split backs was a very cool formation that used to be in the game some years back. Really good under center formation. It was removed for a while. I think at a time it kind of became a little too OP because of certain types of plays that they had in it. So they just kind of removed it from the game for a while, but now it's back, and I think a lot of people are going to have fun with that. Something I'm looking forward to, getting on the game and messing with. Another big change, they added functionality to allow slot receivers to motion out wide from single back tight slots and single back tight flex formations. So if you remember a few years back, Madden 16 and beyond, you could motion slot receivers in shotgun tight slots, tight flex. One of the guys won the Madden Challenge that year, and a big part of his offense was he would motion out one of the slot receivers, and that year was kind of a glitchy thing. It was hard to defend a certain corner route that he would motion out. So they just immediately took the ability to do that out of the game because it was too overpowered. Now that I guess they have it addressed, they've added that back into the game, which should be there because you should be able to motion slot receivers in tight sets because you can in real life. So I guess they got it fixed, so they finally added that back into the game. And here, going back to the kickoff thing, says they updated the alignment for the kickoff return formations to address exploits around pinning opponents deep in their own territory with consistent coffin corner kicks. So this goes back to the scum kick thing I was talking about. So it's kind of a two-part fix. One, they fixed it to where if you don't kick off the ball accurately, it's going to go out of bounds anyway. But also they changed the alignment of the kickoff return so that even in a case where they can pin you on the sideline, your guy actually has a chance to field the ball and try to return it instead of kind of just diving at the ball and going out of bounds and having no shot to return it. So they kind of did a double whammy on that one, which is good. Now let's go to coverage updates, defensive coverage updates. A lot of good stuff here as well. Some of this stuff I had talked about in my preview video a few days ago. Said they added the coverage logic for the quarter flat defender in cover 4 quarters and cover 4 palms to react more aggressively to flat routes. I did a video a few days ago talking about 3 updates that were coming. This was one of them. When you play cover 4 quarters and cover 4 palms, the quarter flat defender is supposed to aggressively play the flat route when it's there. When there's a flat threat, he's supposed to aggressively play that. If there is no flat threat, then he drops further back. He was not doing that. He would drop back a little bit too far and then get to the flat way too late to where even if there was a flat route threat, he couldn't get there in time to defend it. So that has been fixed. Some more coverage updates. They added coverage logic for the quarter flat defender in cover 4 quarters and cover 4 palms to defend mesh concepts more effectively. So not only will they defend the flat routes more effectively, but as you know in Madden, dual drags, mesh routes, mesh concepts, whatever you want to call it, has always been something that's been hard for a lot of the coverages to cover without shading your defense completely underneath and selling out to stop it. So now when you run a cover 4 quarters or a cover 4 palms, those quarter flats are going to be able to match those drag routes very effectively now, making them not as easy to complete. They added coverage logic for the deep half defender in cover 6 to cover post routes more effectively. So a lot of you know cover 6 has been kind of glitchy since the release of the game. They a lot of times really with that deep route kind of not sticking to that area of the field, so you could beat them with like post or sometimes deep streak routes. That is gone. And this is another huge update coverage wise. Added coverage logic for cover 3 sky and cover 3 match to cover PA crosser type plays more effectively. Again, if you play online, you know what PA crossers is. You probably see it a ton. And one of the main reasons that this type of play or just deep crossing routes in general are so effective, especially, is because the zones are not matching the crossing route when they were supposed to. Specifically in cover 3, the hook zones, one of the hook zones are supposed to match that crossing route and carry it to the sideline, so making it a lot harder to complete that. Instead of just leaving it wide open, there's supposed to be a defender trailing behind or, running with that route. Now that will happen, so if people are just trying to abuse you with deep crossing routes, shouldn't be as big of an issue. So what all of this tells me right here is that Madden is definitely moving to a place where they're trying to get the coverage logic, as close to real life as possible, where zones, doesn't matter if you're in a zone or if you're in a man. If you're in a zone, certain zones are supposed to match certain routes depending on, area of the field, depending on what type of coverage you're in. These zones are supposed to match routes, and that's why zones or just defense in Madden has been so bad, since the beginning of time, because you just have zones out there just playing a spot on the field, and they're not matching routes when they're supposed to. They're not committing to routes when they're supposed to. So it just leaves too many holes for guys to run wide open. And then when it comes to man defense, it's extremely hard for man to keep up with some of these routes that are in the game. So now that the coverage logic is improving year by year, update by update, you're going to have to really put together legit route combinations to free up guys in these zones, because if you're just trying to run basic crossing patterns or, not really mix up your route combinations, these zones are going to match routes that they're supposed to and make it difficult for you. Now moving into the blocking updates, this kind of goes along with some of that, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but the blocking updates are another huge update that was added. So they added pass blocking and QB contain logic to address exploit blitzes from nickel 3-5 odd formations and similar setups. So the reason that nickel 3-5 odd, the crossfire blitz, is so effective, one of the main reasons it's so effective, is because people will contain the outside defenders. The contain blitz at the beginning of the year was very effective, but not only because they wouldn't get blocked most of the time, but also because even when they would get blocked, they would be able to disengage and block shed very quickly, which is not what the contain is really meant to do. The contain is there to prevent QB rollouts, especially in Madden. The reason the contains in Madden, I mean, in real life, when you're containing the edge, you're trying to contain the QB and keep him in the pocket as well, but in Madden specifically, the QB contain is meant to keep guys like Michael Vick, people from just being able to go online and just spam the turbo and run outside the pocket with Michael Vick. But the way the contains were behaving right now is they were behaving more like a pass rusher than a contain. So now you're going to notice the contains are going to take a wider angle. So you're not going to get that free rush from contains, and you're not going to get those quick block sheds from contains when the QB is in the pocket. So when you're running like a nickel 3-5 odd, that was part of the reason the looper was able to come free as well, because the offensive line had to treat the contain more like a pass rusher than an actual contain assignment. So you're just going to notice a lot of differences with contains now. You're not going to be able to get easy pass rush with them, and this should really help nickel 3-5 odd and just defenses in general. This should help the offense be able to pick up some of these blitzes. Another big change here is that they addressed an issue causing offensive tackles to use short pass sets and shotgun formations when blocking against some defensive formations such as the big nickel over G. This is a defense I talked about earlier. I talked about this in the update. The block shed defense from nickel over G that you were seeing a lot online, that's not going to happen anymore. And again, the reason this was happening is because there's a logic on the offensive line where if you have 5 guys inside of the tackle, so you pinch the defensive line and then you would bring your linebacker deep down over the center, you have 5 defenders inside of the 5 offensive linemen. The game would look at that and say, this is they get into a certain set depending on what they see. And because of that, it was allowing the easy block shed to come on the outside because the tackles would just let them go. That's not going to happen anymore now. So if you're expecting it to get the easy block sheds by using that type of an exploit, you're not going to be able to see that anymore. Now, what this tells me, when we look at the blocking and the coverage updates as a whole, this tells me that Madden is trying to go more towards getting away. I mean, obviously getting away from the spammy blitzes, from the overpowered glitchy blitzes, and try to get more to a 4-man rush style of defense. Because the coverage is getting so much better now, it's more of a viable option. In old Maddens, you kind of needed glitchy blitzes and quick pressure to get stops because the coverage was just so bad. Like I said, they couldn't match routes. The logic wasn't there. So you had to get to the quarterback immediately, or else, if you give the quarterback 4 seconds in the pocket, he's just going to pick you apart. Any good player is going to be able to pick you apart because the coverage doesn't hold up. Now that the coverage is getting better and they're able to hold up, 4-man rushes are more viable now because you're still going to get block sheds. You're just not supposed to get them in 2 seconds flat every single time out of the same setup. But if you have good pass rushers, you're going to get a block shed in 3 seconds pretty consistently. So you're not going to have the need to spam the glitchy blitzes anymore. And yes, obviously you can still blitz and bring pressure, but it's more realistic pressure. Like you're bringing 6 guys versus 5 blockers. Well, somebody has to come free. Or you're bringing 5 versus 5, but you're able to, force a double team and get a guy in free. But when you're able to just rush 5 versus 7 blockers, or rush 4 versus 5 and still get somebody free almost every time, those aren't realistic. So they're trying to get away from that and trying to make it to where realistic blitzes have to hit home, and realistic 4-man rush is viable because coverage is actually good. Now, the last and final big update to talk about was made to Madden Ultimate Team, and what this is they added the option to play MUT squads as a duo instead of a trio. So before, MUT squads was a 3-on-3 game. You had to play 3-on-3. people have been asking, hey, can we get 2-on-2? A lot of times people don't have a third guy, or, you know, they don't want to match up with a random third guy. Two buddies just want to play. Now you can play squads as a duo, and there's a note with this. It says, when playing as a duo, you must select the offensive and defensive captain roles. The responsibilities that were previously owned by the head coach will now be controlled by the defensive captain. So that's a really cool update. Adding duos to MUT squads, I think, is great. Overall, I think on paper, this is a fantastic update. It remains to be seen how it's going to play out, if it's going to open up any more exploits. Typically, that does happen. I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time, but on paper, I really love everything that is here, so hopefully that it plays out well. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to just look at all the patch notes and all the other little things, I'll have that linked in the description below. But as always, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, as always, just drop a like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.